You can see me and hear me. Sorry, hi, we're live. I'm having a little technical glitch getting my guest in, so please give me a minute or two. Yay! Hi, Allison, we're live. We did it.
Hello, everybody.
That's so exciting. All right. So, hi, everyone. I would just hear that you, if someone would type in the chat that you can see us and hear us, that would be superb. And I'm hoping, wait, let me look at my screen and see what happens. Yikes. I hope that there isn't an issue because I started and stopped it. Okay. Can anyone see and hear us? I know there's a little bit of a delay, so we need to just wait a minute. But can anyone see and hear us? Oh, good. I know there's a little bit of a delay. So can you hear the delay? Okay, turning that off. Yes, yay, we're on. Okay. All right. Welcome, everybody. I'm so glad you're here, and I'm so glad my friend Allison is here. So welcome, welcome. Sorry we got started a couple minutes late, but I'm Jean from Waldorf-Inspired Learning, and this is the June webinar At Home with Bubba. And this month, our topic is homeschooling through high school. So I want to welcome everybody who's here viewing, and we'd love it if you would introduce yourself in the chat box. That would be fabulous. And in just a moment, I'm going to introduce Allison so she can have a chance to say hello too. So today we're talking about high school, and like I said, my name's Jean, and my website is Waldorf-Inspired Learning, where I share all kinds of tips about homeschooling and help you create your own plan that is practical, doable, and sustainable. And Allison and I have been a great support to each other and all of that over the years. So we each have 3 children. Allison and I each have 3 children. You're going to hear a little bit more about us when I get to the slides and we do a fuller introduction. But I just wanted to say hello and welcome, Allison. And I thought you might just want to say a few things about who you are and maybe how we know each other.
Great. Well, that's all been lost in time somewhere, but it's been a long time. But Jean and I have been Waldorf homeschooling together in a way, although always far apart. I live in Austin, Texas, and we've known each other since my 2 youngest, and maybe your youngest, were in elementary school. And I have just my youngest son now will be going to college in the fall, just like Jean's youngest daughter has 1 more year, and then she will be in college. So we've come a long way together, shared a lot of experiences, and I look forward to chiming in as she goes through the high school presentation and just adding any experience or knowledge that I can offer. So great to have you all here.
Thank you. Thanks so much. So I'm just going to say hello to a few people here who are in the chat. So Allison, you can have an idea who's.
Do I not see the chat? Just you see the chat?
You can't see the chat unless you're watching it on a second device.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So sorry, but that's just the way technology is. So I just want to say hello to Vanna, who's in Pennsylvania. Hi, Vanna. Francesca, Casey from California, Susie from Nebraska, and Otaku from New Jersey. Let's see, Jenny. Hi, Jenny. and I'm so glad you all are here. So we will, I'm sure, have more people joining us as we go along. And we're going to go ahead and jump into the presentation. I just want to give you a couple of tips. So most of you, if you've been here before, you know that there's a giveaway toward the end of the webinar, and the way you enter the giveaway is by putting your name and where you're from in the chat. If you also want to let us know what grades or how old your kids are, that would be really cool to know too, because I know some of you may be approaching high school and others of you are just curious what life might be like down the road. So please introduce yourself in the chat, and I'm going to go ahead and share my slides so that we can get started with the presentation. So,
Jean?
Yeah.
So since I cannot see the chat, if something comes up that you think I could respond to, either in the chat or out loud, let me know, like a question or something.
I will definitely do that.
I'll try to just intuit what you're doing. And if I write something in the chat, it might come in a funny place because I'm not putting it in. I can't see the chat, so just want everyone to know that.
Okay. All right. Cool. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and then I'm going to say hi to some more people in the chat because it's really fun to hear about the ages of your kids. So, okay, can you see that or no? Allison, do you see the slides?
No.
All right, so this is the problem I've, oh, here, wait, hang on. There we go. Darn it. Come on, baby. Yikes. Don't do that.
There you go.
Okay, very good.
Yes.
All right, so, and if the viewers at home could also let us know that you see the slides, that would be superb. Okay, so for Allison and myself, I'm just going to say hi to a few more people, and I'd asked if you all would type in how old your kids are right now. That would be super helpful. So welcome to At Home with Waldorf. This is our June webinar all about homeschooling high school. And we have, Vana has kids ranging from age 22 down to 1. So she has a couple of teenagers. Hi, Melanie from Maryland. Jess has ages 15, 7, oh, 7th grade, age 12. Yeah, so a couple of teenagers too. Casey has a teenager. That's great. Jenny has ages 14 and 11. And Allison, that's Ben's mom, Jenny. Hi, Jenny.
Oh, nice.
Ben was in our class that Allison and I taught together this year. So we did an online class for the very first time. And we have Christina, who still just has a little one. But welcome, welcome. This will give you an idea of life somewhere down the road. So we're going to go ahead and move along here. So welcome, everybody. Here's how these webinars go. Those of you who've been here before know that we do this meet and greet at the beginning, and then we take a deep dive into one nugget of Waldorf wisdom, and this month it's high school, homeschooling high school. And then I have some songs and verses to share, and we have a Q&A time. I give you a few updates and a discount code, and the giveaway this month is also, again, two different winners, 2 mentor sessions. You'll each get a mentor session with me, a 30-minute session. And then I have a great quote from Rudolf Steiner about adolescence to share with you at the end. All right, so this webinar, if you're wondering if it's for you, I just want you to know that you might have children in any of the grades and are curious about homeschooling, and maybe you're wondering if it's even possible to homeschool during high school. And Alison and I are both here to tell you, yes, it's possible. You might be thinking of homeschooling high school, but you're not sure how that might work because you're not there yet. Perhaps you want some ideas and your children are already in high school. Or you might be wondering how to make high school different, how to make your homeschool different than a classroom setting, which seems like something we are kind of up against no matter the ages, right? No matter what ages our children are. All right, so homeschooling high school is our topic. That's a photo from my homeschool teen co-op that I taught high school English at last year. Always love those group photos of teenagers. And then Alison and I each have some photos to share of our own teens. But first, let me just give you a couple tips. If you lose us or things go kind of wonky, which every once in a while they can, the best thing to do is refresh your screen, and usually that fixes it. It's also good to have a strong internet connection, and sometimes closing other tabs and things can really help with that. And then we hope you'll participate in the chat box. You're welcome to ask questions as we go along, and then we'll have a Q&A time also a little bit later. So here are my boys when they were teenagers. They're now in their mid-20s, but I love this picture because I have to tell this really funny story. They were coming home from summer camp. So any of you who might have had kids go to sleepaway camp, they were rather tired and grouchy when we picked them up at the airport. And this was the summer that my choleric redheaded son, the middle one there, he's the oldest, but he's the middle in the picture. He had decided that he needed to take to camp with him this bullet belt. So he had some really fancy clothes when he was a teenager, and he had bought this bullet belt online, and it was these brass cartridges, like spent cartridges, and it was a decorative item, and he decided he'd take it to summer camp with him. So he packed it in his bag, and the mother who transported them to the airport got a call from airport security saying that one of her teenagers had been pulled off the plane because of a questionable item that was in his luggage. So, of course, that bullet belt was confiscated by airport security, and it lived in the display case, the glass display case at the Cleveland airport for many, many years, the case entitled "What Not to Take with You on the Airplane." So, just one of those fun teenage stories. All right, here are Alison's teenagers.
Yeah, Jean asked me for some pictures, and my phone is messed up and I can't email from my computer, so I just put what I had on my phone. So the one on the left is my son Jack, and we were going off to the anniversary screening of Gone with the Wind that was showing at the Paramount Theater at Austin. And then I just thought the other picture, James, was kind of the classic teenager picture, drinking his highly caffeinated drink and his sunglasses. So I just threw that one in there so you would have a picture. And I also have an older son, Sam, who is 25 and married and lives in Berkeley, California. So 3 boys.
Right. So Alison has 3 kids and I have 3 kids. So we have both almost made it, right, through 3 kids each through their teenage years.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So I just wanted to start out with this kind of reminder of how Steiner categorizes the stages of development. So this is a chart of the 7-year cycles in Waldorf education, and you've heard the phrase is probably thinking, feeling, and willing, and Steiner talked a lot about bringing these three kind of soul experiences together in our learning and in our teaching. So in the early years, children learn through imitation and doing, and in the middle years, ages 7 through 14, or the elementary years, they learn mostly through their feelings, which is why we try to infuse everything that we do with the arts, because that elicits strong feelings. And then from about age 14 and up, they learn through their thinking and through the actual content and through new ideas. So I just want to give this as a foundation for us for our conversation today, because we're going to be talking about those thinking years. My husband would sometimes say, finally, finally the thinking kicks in, right? Although it isn't fully developed for many years still. But this is kind of where teenagers are. They're beginning to really engage with ideas, with big ideas. Okay. So Alison and I are going to talk today about a variety of topics, including earning credits, the possibilities of college, but also how to fashion the high school years so that you can be really, really creative, and then at the same time have the experiences kind of fit into what somebody down the road might be looking for. So there are two basic ways to earn high school credits, and this is if you're planning to kind of keep track and make your own transcripts. But as you'll see as we go along, there are lots of ways to mix and match, basically, different experiences. So the kind of traditional way, and this is what's done in a classroom, is that to earn a high school credit, a full credit would be that you complete a course, a full year course, or you complete a full textbook program. But there is another way that you can you can keep track of what constitutes a credit, and that's by counting hours. So in our family, we used something called a Carnegie unit, and 120 hours is a full credit of work. So you could literally, like for English, you could count when a child is reading, when they do any writing, when they go to a poetry slam, when they, there are all kinds of activities that could count for these hours. And hours toward that constitute a credit vary greatly. Like different people choose to use a different system. So Alison, what have you done?
I'm just typing this in. I feel like, sorry, I'm typing. I guess I was more intuitive about that. I never counted hours.
Yeah.
And the boys always had a mixture of kind of homeschool courses, online courses. So that in itself was already set up to be a complete credit. Then courses taught like at co-ops, if that was set up for a year, I just trusted that that was a complete credit. And then the dual credit is, of course, a whole course in a semester. But both my kids have courses that we sort of put together by listing a few books, creating a few assignments, and you could do those things for a semester or a year, and just kind of roughly estimate how much time. And if you do include any kind of extra travel or field trips or lectures, you're there very, very easily. So we've never had any issues of someone questioning the credits that we put on their transcript. There's a way to make it look and to have it be very, rigorous and legitimate by listing the books you used and the assignments you gave. So that's
great. So
did I answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. And it does. So that's just another example, like it really varies a lot, how people keep track of it. And we would start out sometimes counting hours just to see if we were on track, but then at some point, we no longer would feel a need to do that.
Yeah.
So, and we're going to talk more about the dual credit option in just a couple of minutes. So, all right, so that's kind of the basic framework of how to earn a high school credit. So I do like to say it's helpful to know your state's graduation requirements, but it comes with this caveat. So these are really meant for public school kids. I mean, these are the requirements for a child to graduate from high school in a public school. So you can go online to your state's Department of Education and find out what those graduation requirements are. That does not mean that your child is also required to fulfill all of this. So I strongly suggest being creative and deciding, like knowing what your student is interested in particular. They are kind of the standard, like I'm in Ohio, Alison is in Texas, and I compared the requirements for our two states, and I think every state, and I'm not sure if there's anybody from outside of the United States here today, I can't remember, but in the United States, so in Ohio, well, almost every state requires 4 years of English or 4 credits. And the math tends to vary between 3 or 4. Science and social studies are both generally 3. Some have specific foreign language, some states specific foreign language requirements. Others don't. Ours is just that if you want, it can be part of your electives, and then there's usually a phys ed requirement. So that just gives you an idea. This is the very standard graduation requirement.
People get very hung up on these.
Yes.
And I would just chime in that really I can only speak from my experience of 2 homeschool kids applying for college, but really if you're trying to get into the state system, even there in Texas, we had the experience that you're just put in a different category instead of being evaluated almost mechanically. I'm not even exactly sure how they do it. I think if you go to a ranked school and you've got a certain GPA and your transcript shows you fit these things, then you're in or something like that. But if you're in a different category, they evaluate your stuff individually. So I think we sort of had these things, but really James's stuff was evaluated individually in a separate category where they looked at him alone, his recommendations, his coursework, his book list, his resume, and all that stuff. And then they decided, did he seem like he had a course of study that prepared him for college? And the answer was yes. So there's a lot of room here, but it's always good if you want to apply within the state system to kind of look these over, because this is what people will look like that are applying from public high school.
Yeah, which is a great point. And Alison and I are going to give more specific examples about each of our children a little bit later. But I just wanted to give you this as a framework, but also with that caveat that you don't have to follow this strictly. It's just good to know this is the general frame, right? And Alison, I thought you might want to mention here the Brain Bump consulting. I have a link to it later on, but did you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, I can. So first I would say that when our kids hit high school age, remember, if you're homeschooled, all these things are a little fuzzy for you, right? Like the idea of English classes, math classes, science classes. I mean, you're getting the idea that there's different areas of study, and you need classes in those areas. You're kind of building that up in junior high. But we sort of just talked with each of our kids individually, okay, pretty basic. Every year you have math, science, I think we called it history, social studies, I guess, and English, foreign language, and that's basically it. So how do you want to do those things? How do you want to study those things? And then the rest gives them space to really be themselves, the other stuff they're doing. But we did require those 5 things. And there's a woman here in Austin who is really wonderful. Her name is Camille North. And she has set up a consulting website called Brain Bump Consulting that is devoted to giving out a lot of free information. And I think if you want to use her more privately, you can talk about that. I'm not even sure if she's charging for that, about getting your kids into college. And in her case, it's pretty selective colleges. And she is a great advocate for keeping your creativity and your freedom that you have in schooling. In fact, she just sent out a public service announcement on our list that actually, as a homeschool graduate, nothing is required, that we were going to be inundated, as many of you are on your local websites, with classes that are 1 credit in this and fulfilling this requirement in this. And she's really trying to get us to all take a step back, take a deep breath, and really think about what a homeschool, high school, rigorous education could look like that doesn't actually fit in all these categories so neatly. So I would definitely recommend checking out that website at some point.
Yeah, so that's really helpful. And Susie has put in the chat, which is also, I think, something that's really helpful, the comment that it helps to know what college or colleges your student is interested in, because that can give you can tailor their studies to suit that college or those colleges. Now, not all children know, right? So I don't think any of my children really knew specifically, except for my middle son. So my oldest and youngest didn't really have any idea. They were more interested in a liberal arts school. And but it does help to think, okay, well, maybe it might be this one or this one, and then go and look at those colleges' websites, or look in some of the books that describe colleges to see, what other students who are applying there have studied. And they usually have a suggested course of study for high schoolers. So thanks.
We've had very good luck with the Colleges That Changed Lives resource.
Yeah, so I have that also listed on the resource page, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. Okay. So I just wanted to give there are so many, there are endless number of options for high school, and these are just a few, and Allison and I are going to give some specific examples of things that we've done with our children. So you can, of course, design your own class to be completed at home for your student or students.
Have them design it.
You can have them design it, which is a fabulous idea. You can complete a textbook. So, Allison and I are both more humanities people. I'm an English teacher. She's a history person. So for me, I've needed to do a math text, and I know a lot of other people do also, either a math textbook or take math at the community college level, because it's not something that I would be able to teach at the high school level. Calculus, not my thing. So students can enroll part-time at the local public school if your district allows that. I know a number of students who've had success with that. You can hire a teacher for a small group of students, or you yourself could offer a class. Allison and I both have done that in various ways. You could start an academic club, which is can be a really fun thing for high schoolers. And I will say that I do think it's important for high schoolers to have some opportunity to study with other students, because they have a real need for social interaction, and it really stimulates learning and conversation, discussion, right? So academic clubs are great. We'll give some examples of those. You could choose to enroll in an umbrella school. There are a number of them, like NARS, which stands for the North Atlantic Regional High School. It's in the East, but open to students all over. Oak Meadow has an enrollment program. The Clonlara School is also has a campus. It's in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and there are a lot of homeschoolers who have had great success with that. Our family has not done any of these. I'm just putting them up there as possibilities. And I don't, Allison, you haven't done any of these either, right?
No.
No. Okay, community college classes. You can get dual credit, meaning you get high school and college credit at the same time for classes that are taken at the community college level. Allison and I both have experience with this, so we will talk more about that when we get into some specifics. And then there's also the possibility of taking AP classes and the AP test or a CLEP test. Those, just like community college classes, unless you've researched, as Susie said, and worked backward from the school that you plan to go to and know that they're going to accept these, just know that it's not guaranteed that these credits for any of these things are necessarily going to transfer.
Right.
They often do, and to me it's worth the experience regardless.
I mean, I've never done the CLEP test. I don't think we needed that, but I could see how if you're doing a CLEP subject at home just on your own with the textbook and kind of learning, it's like another source of assurance that this met certain standards. So say you designed a biology course and then you went and took the CLEP test for it, then you sort of show that, yeah, I did learn a lot of biology. And I mean, I'm not saying the CLEP test is a great measure of learning, but it gives them some outside source of documentation to correlate with your other stuff. I could see that being helpful at sometimes, but I personally did not do it.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. You know, one of the things for high schoolers applying to for homeschoolers applying to college is that you know, we don't have class rank or a known entity of a school that our students are coming out of. So there is a need, I think, for college admissions people, which I understand. They have a need to have a full picture of this particular student.
I'm pushing it for all kids, really, and I do have mixed feelings about things like the ACT and the SAT, but because there's so much grade inflation also in the schools, like it's one sort of what they feel is an objective standard that everyone's having to, you know, show, which I can kind of get to. So I don't know if you have a slide about those tests, but those are going to be a big factor.
And maybe perhaps a bigger factor, you know, as a homeschooler, since, you know, my kids, we've kept a portfolio of their work, but they have not taken a lot of tests. So, yeah, I don't have a slide.
You don't have to overly focus on it, but it's definitely something that will have to be addressed, yeah.
Right. So just this morning, I was proctoring an ACT practice test for the students in my high school English class, the homeschoolers, two of whom are taking the ACT on Saturday, and practicing is super, super important, especially because they don't have a lot of experience taking standardized tests.
Right.
So, yeah. Okay. So I'm going to switch gears slightly, and then we'll get back to some specifics. So I get a lot of questions about, you know, how do we make high school look like Waldorf, right? Like, are there still main lesson blocks even in high school? And there are 40 plus Waldorf high schools in the United States. And yes, they generally do continue doing main lesson blocks in high school. There are some standard blocks that you may recognize from, if you know anything about Waldorf high schools, like such as there's, they all read Parzival in 11th grade, and they read Moby Dick in, I don't know, in 9th or 10th. They do a geometry block in 9th grade. They do a rivers block in, I can't remember which grade, so Rivers of the World. So there are still main lesson blocks. They tend to be, you know, an hour and a half to 2 hours in the morning in the main subject areas, English, math, science, history. And then the rest of the day they have, fine arts and foreign language and often an additional math for math practice that's ongoing. To me, this is really well suited to what we're doing at home because, I think high school courses are best broken down into units of study. So when I teach high school English, we have a poetry block. We had a block, this year on, we did British poets. I can't remember if it was from a particular time period or not. But what we were able to do, it ran 6 to 8 weeks, and we were able to bring in a lot of hands-on learning into it. So they wrote their own poetry with magnetic. Have you ever seen the magnetic poetry where you move the words around? And they did some art, really gorgeous artwork pieces to illustrate some of the poems that we read, and that kind of thing. But I will say that as a family, we have not planned in our high school years in main lesson blocks in the same way that we have in elementary school. So Alison, I don't know if you want to say anything.
No, I mean, I do want to say something. But no, we did not do main lesson blocks in high school. We shifted to the subject, but not all of the things lasted for a year. Sometimes they were more of a semester. And sometimes those semester courses kind of lifted out from bringing together things that were actually done over a period of years, but I put them into a semester. Like if someone has a particular interest in astronomy, my youngest son, so he read Stephen Hawking, and I'm thinking of Ben. I could see Ben doing this, reading Stephen Hawking, Brian Greene, went to some talks, went to some transit of Venus stuff at the university. I combined all those things and created a semester course out of it.
Which is another great thing about high school is that
so you have some space, breathing room. You can say, let's look at these 3 years and see what interests were consistently pursued, and can I turn that into a course? You can do that. Yeah.
Right, like after the fact, basically.
Right.
We're going back and looking at what they've done. And I will also say that there is sort of a semblance of main lesson blocks in a way, because what we've done personally, when we've done these academic clubs, I taught a course called History Through Film, or I taught another class. I created a biology class that was kind of like what Alison was describing, where it was pieces over 2 different years, and then it became a full credit. But we often, and co-ops often do this, often our club kind of topics or special integrated whatever, like the History Through Film class was 12 weeks. So in a way, a block is really like a unit study. So, I do think it's helpful to kind of chunk it up, right, into different subjects. It's just that I think as homeschoolers, one of the main advantages is that we can integrate subjects, right? So we don't have to be doing an English main lesson block and then a history main lesson block, right. And then we can really be fully integrating these subjects in a way that isn't really possible or done very often in a...
I actually put every point we're talking about. This is if you're getting, and I think it is still holding the space as homeschooling high schoolers. I think we need more of this. Your kids need to be with other people. There's a lot of ways to do that and learn from other people. There's many ways to do that. But it's, if you are still going to be holding some of this space academically, this is what I would do when I was putting together history classes. The Giver class we just taught too, that Ben was in, whose mom is on the webinar right now. We tried to keep the lively arts in play. We tried to make cross-disciplinary assignments, just what Jean is talking about, and we wanted to make it really engaging and really inspiring, still working with that feeling into thinking trajectory. That's part of the Waldorf developmental sequence. So I think, Gina, that's exactly what, we just said the same thing in different ways.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you. Yeah. So that's a great segue into, oh, thank you. Jenny said that the class was fantastic. It was such a good experience. This giver class, we were experimenting with an online class, and we had such fun teaching these teenagers from all over the world. We had a student from Australia and someone from Canada. It was great. All right, so a good segue into my next point, which is take advantage of community experiences. So you've probably been doing this all along if you've been homeschooling for a while, right? So you can go to the orchestra, you can go to museums, the theater. One of my favorite things, I love the theater. So we have a Shakespeare company here that puts on 2 Shakespeare plays a year, and I think for 20 years I've gone to them because I've been taking some mix of children every time, and it's so unbelievably fabulous to be able to have that experience, and then that counts toward whatever, however, whether you're reading the play, you could be doing a partial staged performance at home, you could just be learning about Shakespeare and then go see it. There's just so many ways to weave that into your learning. So nature centers, internships, job shadowing is a really, really wonderful thing to set up or have your team set up, where they can go shadow someone who works in a field that they're interested in. And then a lot of schools actually require community service hours, and that's been something that we've chosen to do in our house, at least as homeschoolers, to have them involved in community service every year in some fashion. So my Waldorf self just wants to say, remember to keep the arts and nature alive for your teens, because sometimes when you get serious, quote unquote, those are the things that fall out. And teenagers, even though they're ready to engage in ideas and real content, they benefit enormously because they're learning about themselves, right? So they benefit enormously from the arts and nature and hands-on learning. So don't stop doing those things during these years.
Right. And I would add, and I know Camille, the brain bump person I mentioned, is a big advocate of not encouraging someone to be too well-rounded. Some people just want to be well-rounded, so that's the way they're going to be. They like a little bit of theater, they like a little bit of nature, they like a little bit of, playing an instrument and being athletic. But a lot of kids, as they grow up, their direction starts to surface more. And I think, especially if you're thinking about college, but even life in general, you don't need to be. I know colleges like to see a consistent interest pursued over a time period with possibly engaging with different people, like in an internship or a volunteer thing, or if it's a sport, I guess a team. But, you just need 1 or 2 things that you're really into. And then you can just do your schoolwork and live your life by enjoying, going to a play now and then or whatever. But you don't need to cover all those bases.
And I think that the trend sometimes, I think this is especially true.
Superficial, yeah.
Yeah, in private schools, is to be really superficial about it and try to be super gung-ho about covering a ton of different things. And kids get really burned out and stressed, but it also, colleges in particular, they know there's no way they can be going in depth into these subjects. So remember to keep that, go deep, not wide necessarily, that mantra that I use often about Waldorf homeschooling. Keep that in mind. So I've just listed a couple of national programs that my kids have participated in, or I know other homeschoolers who have, and you'll be able to come back and look at some of these, because I'll have the links below the replay, and you can also watch the replay. But my kids did something called the National High School Mock Trial, which is it's a competition, and students get a case, and then they act out the different parts. and they compete against other groups and schools. Fabulous experience. My daughter did Destination Imagination, which is another amazing experience where students get to pick a challenge, and then they spend the whole year, creating, or really half a year, right, until maybe February or March, and then they compete. It's so integrated, all different subjects. It's a super cool thing. My daughter is a volunteer at the Playhouse, the Cleveland Playhouse, an usher, and then they also have workshops for these teen volunteers. There's a STEM program here in Cleveland at Case Western Reserve University where these teens who are called environmental heroes, they get to do real research in the field. And then some of my students have participated in the Yes Magazine writing competition, and they have either 2 or 3 a year, so you might want to check that out.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just putting out some stuff, some things. Some of these are more local, but all of these things, this is my more artsy son did these things. I could tell that little story of just how these things can flow. And since this son is right here working on his fish tanks, we went to a Shadow a Scientist Day that just came up on our list, and it was at the University of Texas, and I just, this looks cool. So I took James there when he was in 8th grade, and he went, I left him there, and he was just on fire when I picked him up, and had sort of made a personal contact with one of the people they were shadowing, and the guy was like, hey, I'd love James to come and work in my lab. So he's a great guy who, professor at UT who wanted students working in his lab, I guess even a high school student. So James started in 8th grade and worked for him for at least 2 years in his lab, very hard, very technical stuff, and was given that experience, and then that led to another thing, but that was just an impromptu, hey, let's go check this out. So I always like to say, kind of be open and be ready to kind of follow a little bit of spontaneous lead, and some really neat things can fall into place. And because he was homeschooled, he could go when only college students could go work in the lab.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that because we're homeschooled, these kinds of opportunities come up for us.
Yeah.
So Alison, I would love for us to just take a few minutes, although we're getting close to the top of the hour, but just to talk about what our own kids' personal experiences have been. So I'll just start and say that my oldest chose to go to public high school, and then he went to college and graduate school right here in Cleveland. He was really into math and science, and we have a liberal arts school that kind of specializes here in Cleveland. So shockingly and wonderfully, surprisingly, he went to school here. My second son chose not to go to college. He went to a technical institute because his opinion was, and he's very opinionated, that none of his friends were getting jobs after college, so he wanted to learn a technical skill. So he is a mechanic, and he went to actually motorcycle mechanic school, and then, but now works on bicycles. So he is a bike mechanic for Specialized, like the second largest bike manufacturer in the United States, and he loves it. And now my daughter, my third child, is taking community college classes for dual credit, and really enjoying that. They're challenging, and I have some pointers about community college that I'll give shortly, but she has done all my kids have done a variety of things, from co-ops to, we had something called potluck presentations where students had to, we got together with other homeschool families and had fun potluck dinners, and they had to each present on anything topic of their choice. So that's kind of the combination that's happened in my family. Alison, you want to say a little bit?
Yeah, I know we want time for questions. So I would just say, like, the principle of keeping a variety in terms of how you do their coursework. So you could do some online. That doing too much is probably no fun, but it's a great experience managing that technology, because once they get into classes, there's a lot of technology that goes with most classes now. And it turns out that the ThinkWell, if you go to ThinkWell, they have some of you maybe already use ThinkWell. They have really good courses, really solid courses, and really great for math because you can repeat that video as many times as you need to learn it. And another serendipitous thing is 2 of my sons, one is a junior, is transferring, and James will start as a freshman at Southwestern here in Georgetown, Texas, and their president was the math teacher on ThinkWell. So just weird how that turned out. But ThinkWell is a very good source of online stuff. Jean and I were talking about how the teen classes and things we did in our home really were really a big part of things the first couple of years of high school, and then you sort of move toward the dual credit situation more. But holding that fun social / academic space was fun. I had big medieval dinners and I don't know, a billion big events here that went along with my classes. All right, was there anything else regarding that, Jean? Oh, yeah, so 2 of them are going to Southwestern. One is a freshman, the other one will be a junior. He's gonna major in art history. And my oldest son just had a really strange path because we moved to this little town where my husband was working at the college. And so he went to college really young. And right now I've been on the bandwagon for kids to wait till at least they're a junior before they go to college. But that's the way Sam did things. And he lives in Berkeley, California, where he studied chemistry as a graduate student. And now he works for Uber as a software designer. So.
That's so cool. That's so great. Yeah. Yeah, so I just want to talk a little more about community college experiences, and then we'll get to questions. And sorry, we're running a little bit over here, but so, you know, every state has a possibility for dual credit. The cool thing about community college, as we've mentioned, is that 1 semester credit from college equals a full year of high school credit. So you can really save some time and money by doing that. But really both Alison and I feel like junior year is a good time to start. Some kids might be ready sophomore year. In Ohio, they've just changed the whole setup, and are trying to encourage students to start in 7th grade. But you need to remember that maturity is a really big piece of them being able to handle this, because it won't be you talking to their professors. It will be, if they're having problems, they have to go initiate those conversations, and they're in class.
Have problems.
yeah, and they're in class with adults. You know, it's a big change. Yeah. All right, so there are all kinds of things to consider if you're looking at college. Transcripts, which you can keep on your own. The tests that Alison and I were talking about, the ACT and SAT tests. There are a number of schools these days that are called test optional, which means that if your child doesn't test well, they can still be accepted into college. You know, begin thinking about college visits and those college applications in high school. At the
same time, don't worry about it too much either.
Yeah. So here is a list of some of our suggested resources. I really like the work by Kathy Cohen, and in addition to these 2 books I've listed here, The Homeschooling the Teen Years and What About College, she wrote a book called Homeschool College Admissions Handbook or something, The Homeschooler's College Admissions Handbook, which is a helpful book to look at. And the last one, Live It, Learn It. Why don't you say something about that?
This is a little strange to have on the high school thing, because it really goes back to even like very early childhood education. So it's just a book that I got a hold of when my kids entered junior high, and I fell in love with the methodology. It's actually, it's focused on kids with learning disabilities and attention deficit and stuff, but its thesis is that there are many ways to assess learning besides a multiple choice test or a fill in the blank test, and that kids who struggle with doing those things can show their learning through many ways, which we know by homeschoolers. We know that. Conversation, games, plays, and there's a million ways to show that you more deeply understood a concept, or it's come to life for you. And so these ideas of these clubs, that's why Jean and I talk about clubs, is that they're academic clubs. You're looking at an academic subject, but you're really bringing it to life. And so it was just inspiring read for me, and sort of set the course for, combined with Waldorf, the way I taught my high school courses. And continue.
Yeah, I love that. And Susie just wrote in the chat, exactly. Don't worry about it all the way through the high school years, or you'll miss the journey. Yeah. So a lot of what Alison and I are describing can be thought of as, have fun, make your high school years really, really engaging. You don't have to stop doing all those things just because
big with their interest
now. And then you can, in retrospect, craft it into a transcript or something that looks a little bit more like make sure that they fulfill all the sort of traditional requirements.
Yeah, and we're both available. We have, for how to do that. I know that comes naturally for us, and so I want to acknowledge that it may not be as kind of rise to the surface of how you might do that. But, there's so much, and I think our two youngest children were just caught up in this major shift between my son, who's a junior in college, and the one who's going to be a freshman, of homeschooling looking so much like school in high school, and chasing after so many classes. And really we're a customer base for a lot of people, particularly here in Austin and online. And I think it's really time to take a step back. And because why do it if you're not going to do it in a way that allows you to use the time you have and the freedom you have to go bigger with what your child loves to do, and make it individual. And it can be to me, the whole college thing became a very great rite of passage when we looked back, and each one of them looked so different, and we had to write a statement about their education, and it just expressed them instead of just a dry transcript that looked the same as everybody else. So I wanted to encourage you on that path, and I know the state schools can be a little different, but these colleges that change lives and schools like them, the second tier liberal arts schools, really want your student and give them a lot of aid, scholarship money. So that's my rah-rah speech for today.
That was great. All right, so I'm going to skip the verses and songs, but you will get, you can download or print out you can print those from below the replay. So it's time for Q&A, and if I don't see any questions right now in the chat box, but I'm going to do the giveaway winner right after this. So if you haven't put in the chat box your name and where you're from to enter the giveaway, please do that now. If you've already done it, I got you. But we did have a couple questions submitted. One was, if your child is taking community college classes, how do you make their experience more Waldorfy, quote unquote? And I honestly, to be perfectly honest, I think that is that would be very, very hard to do. And in some ways, I'm not even sure we need to. Like, I think it's especially, ninth grade is very different than 11th grade, right? So I think ninth grade to me is much more like 7th and 8th grade. But I think by 11th grade, students are ready. They're ready to, in 12th grade, they're ready to be out there and really know what that experience is like. There are a couple of ways, I think, if you want to kind of extend what their learning is. And to me, it would be back to those same Waldorf standbys of story. So, have them read a novel that's related to the subject that they're doing, or go on a field trip to a museum, or, bring some sort of hands-on cultural, artistic, or experience or story into you know, that semester that they're taking whatever the class is that you're trying to extend.
Do you want me to chime in here a minute? Or?
Absolutely.
So
yeah.
I would say that my instinct would not be to try to just let that completely stand alone for what it is. And realistically, a student can take, I mean, at first they maybe should start with one, but 2 of those courses per semester. And remember, when they're doing 2 of those courses per semester, it's really like a 4-course load in high school because they're taking a whole year. A community college course is worth a whole year of credit. So say they have English composition, that's like a whole year of English composition in a semester. And so that's really 2 courses at once as far as high school course load. So they've already, if they're taking 2 classes, they're taking 4. Their workload will be as many as 4 high school classes, maybe even more, depending on the class. So be realistic about what else they should be doing so they could really focus on that. And then just, you know, still have fun, have a rich home life, do all these other things, you know, go to play, have culture, but have maybe those things be more holistic and let the courses stand alone. Like I'm watching Turn right now, this really cool series on the Revolutionary War. I mean, I'm not doing it for school. I'm just really into it with my youngest son and things like that. It's more like parallel or, you know, a common social group versus you're trying to create a class for them with that community class. That's my experience. That's how I go about thinking about it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's really helpful to think in terms of like, I mean, I know so often for me with my second son who was starting homeschooling high school, I felt like, oh my gosh, it's time to get serious. And then that put a damper completely on any interesting, fun, you know, activities. It didn't in the long run, but for a moment, that's what I thought. Like, okay, we got to really get serious here. We can't do all these other things. So, Jenny is saying, do you think it's important to plan for the years in general at the start, or do you do it year by year? And I would say you don't really need to do it starting in 9th grade. And I haven't even really gotten that serious about the transcript idea, et cetera, until their junior year. The one thing I will add, though, Jenny, is that it does help to begin to see, although we've probably seen it some already, but it does help to begin to see where your students' particular interests lie and to be able to gear their studies to that. What do you think, Alison?
You know, it's probably a combination of some things you're looking ahead. So you want to get 3 years master, you're going to do algebra, you know, geometry, algebra 2. I didn't mess with that kind of sequence that much. But yeah, mainly there's that simple thinking of trying to have those subjects in every year, you know, English, history, but that can look so many different ways. So I did try to keep that balance from year to year or encourage them to, because then when you're wrapping it all up, it's kind of like some things were pretty easily in place there. And then this transcriptmaker.com, we made transcripts, and just, if you go to transcriptmaker.com, it's very easy to use. There's probably other things like this. It's just the one I've used, but you need transcripts come up for different things like Science Academy, or they just come up as you in high school and you're applying for different things. And then you just have it, and you can muddle with it all you want. If you pay the $5 a month thing, it's just there and you can constantly edit it. And so it's really kind of nice and reassuring to have that there. And easy. You can just put in anything, you know.
That's a great resource. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to move to, I'm going to come back to that. The giveaway winners, just so you can, thank you for hanging in there with us. So I have 2 winners, and you each win a 30-minute mentor session with me. And the winners are Casey from California and Otaku, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, from New Jersey. So congratulations to both of you, to Casey and Otaku. And you can email me, Jean@WaldorfInspiredLearning.com. And I can send you the questionnaire that I use to get that going, and we can set something up. So, and I love doing these. It's so much fun. It's so much fun to meet people. Yay, Casey, congratulations. All right, so one tip, reminder that Alison and I both want to give, we both will be presenters at the Taproot Teacher Training that happens in August. So if there's any way you might want to come to Ohio, we meet August 11th through 14th in the Cuyahoga Valley National Park. It's a 3-day training for Waldorf homeschoolers. And you can find out more at waldorfinspiredlearning.com/Taproot Teacher Training 2016. So we would love to have you join us for that. And for the rest of you, I also have a 20% off discount for mentor sessions. The code is MentorMeJune, and you can go to waldorfinspiredlearning.com/mentor sessions with Jean, or you can just click mentoring up in the tab menu bar. That's what it's called. The discount is good through Friday. I will say that it is not actually in yet, so you have to give me 5 minutes after the end of the webinar to go put it in.
I'm beating down the door.
I know, but it's an hour's call, and I think there are a couple people on here who I've worked with before, and they're a lot of fun, and I give you lots of practical ideas and guidance. All right, so we are going to close with this quote from Rudolf Steiner. So I love ending with these quotes. One little tidbit is that Rudolf Steiner, he opened the very first Waldorf school in 1919, and 5 years later he died. And during those 5 years, almost all of his time and energy was taken up by dealing with the problems among the high school, the teenage students. So, and it was serious. I mean, they fired teachers, the students left. There were so many problems. And I think, honestly, and other people from the time have hinted at this, that the reason he never wrote down a curriculum for the Waldorf school was because he was just so enmeshed in all of the problems that the teenagers were causing. So here's a quote from Rudolf Steiner. A tumultuous situation arises in the relationship between the adolescent and the world. This tumultuous situation is necessary, and as teachers and parents, we need to have it in mind during the years leading up to it. Overly sensitive teachers might get the idea that it would be better to spare young people this upheaval. However, in so doing, they would make themselves the worst enemy of youth. And Steiner actually called the teenage years, the changes that teens go through, he called it the grand metamorphosis. And that's really our job, is to support that more than anything else. And so we will end with that. And I just want to say thank you to everybody for being here. Here's some different ways to connect with me. And if you have any questions for Alison, I can pass those along too. So you can find me on Pinterest and Facebook and YouTube. And my email is jean@waldorfinspiredlearning.com.
I'm hidden. I'm like a revolutionary spy in the Revolutionary War.
I love that.
You miss my contact.
There you go. And then I just want to say real quickly that next month, I'm talking all about planning, which I'm super excited about because it's one of my things. And the webinar is going to take place on a Thursday because of the whole July 4th weekend and everything. So it's Thursday, July 9th is the next At Home with Waldorf webinar. So thank you so much for joining us.
And thank you. And I hope you feel empowered and let your gifts continue to shine through these.
Yes, absolutely. And Alison, thank you for joining us today. It was really fun.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.